Hey, good morning, everyone. Michael Henderson here, New Grow Wellness. Happy Tuesday. Today, I want to further our conversation about the benefits of combining yoga with bodybuilding. Um, and today, I want to talk about a yogic principle that we would call receiving grace, softening to grace. Um, and what does that mean in yoga, right? I'm going to keep this as simple as possible. So, the philosophy behind that is grace enters in the backside of your heart, right? Grace enters in the backside of your heart. Grace, humility, right? Physiologically, it's lengthening your back body, right? Your back body is your plug, if you will, right? You're plugging in to a greater power, okay? So when you would enter a pose in yoga, a lot of times you want to, if I was going to just raise my hands over my head, right? I'll look at you guys, sorry. If I'm going to raise my hands over my head, and from the side, you see how they're forward, right? They're not straight above my head. A thing we would do in yoga to plug into a bigger picture, to plug into grace enters the backside of the heart, is I would soften, right? I would soften myself. And by doing so, I'm lengthening the backside of my body, right? If you think of a cobra, they're expanding. The hood is from expansion on the backside, right? So I'm making my back as long as possible. So I'm reaching forward, I'm softening myself, right? The opposite of grace and humility is arrogance and, being cocky, if you will, right? Walking out with my chest, right? If I was doing that, I wouldn't be plugging into grace, and my arms are here, right? A lot of times they want to do this. You see that arch in my back? My booty's popping. I'm not in alignment, right? Because I'm not receiving grace first, right? So we plug in, we lengthen, and then from there we pull it in, and then we get full extension. Okay? So that's plugging into grace, that's receiving grace on the backside of the heart in a very small fraction. Also, there's a lot more depth into that. Now, that can be done in push-ups, that can be done standing, that can be done inverted, that can be done laying on your back, right? A lot of times in weight training and lifting and bodybuilding, we're so focused on the one direction, the one plane of motion that we're working on, that we forget to plug into the rest of the body, which is our power source. Now, if you remember when we talked about push-ups, this point in your hand on the ground, along with everything else, this point specifically created the power, right? If that part of your index finger lifted off the ground, there was no power, right? It went from chest, shoulders, triceps, back, core to just shoulders, right? So same thing with yoga. If you don't plug in, you're shortchanging yourself, right? You're shortchanging yourself. Plug in, receive it, pull in, full extension, right? That's what we're looking for. So in bodybuilding, people will focus on, well, I'm doing chest press. They're just focusing on pushing, right? They're just focusing on the concentric. I always think of concentric as against gravity and eccentric with gravity, right? So they're focused on just pushing. Well, what's responsible? What are you plugging into on the backside of that movement? What are you plugging into for support? Your back, right? Your lats. Okay? Your lats. Even your teres major, your rhomboids, right? So when I'm coming down from a bench press, I'm not just coming down with my shoulders. I'm not just moving my arms. I'm receiving the brunt of that weight by pulling in my back. We're going to go to the bench, if you will. So if I'm attempting to do a dumbbell chest press, okay, I'm starting here. I'm going to focus on the eccentric by bracing my backside, pulling in my scapulas, plugging my lats down to my waist, if you will, okay? And I'm holding it with my back. And I'm pressing with my chest and my back, right? So you would think push, pull, protagonist, antagonist. you plug into one to strengthen the other. I'm plugging versus if I don't have them back, let's see if we can do this without hurting myself. I'm just here. See how my shoulders release and they come forward? I come down, my shoulders shrug. That means I'm not plugged into my support mechanism, which is the back side. I'm not plugging into the grace, right? Shoulders tight on my back, my lats tight, my core is engaged. I'm pressing, I'm receiving. I'm pressing, I'm receiving. I'm pressing, I'm receiving. So very much it's about giving and taking, giving and receiving, if you will. Same thing. Now, obviously, if I'm doing a rowing motion, okay, the contractions here, when I come down, again, I'm not flexing my chest like I would be, but I'm staying tight. My whole body's engaged, right? I'm not rowing here. I'm not just doing loose shoulder movements, right? If we want to go further into the philosophy of it, it's like you don't appreciate the light of day without the darkness of night. You don't appreciate the warmth of the sun without the cold of the absence of sun, snow, if you will. You really don't know how good something is until you've experienced the bad, if you will. So yeah, it's another parallel, if you will, another concentric circle, if you will, between bodybuilding and yoga. You have to give to receive, and you have to receive to give. Plug in to grace, plug into humility, humble yourself, both in the gym and on the mat and in everyday life, right? If you are feeling down and kind of depressed, like a button, right? Depressed. Know that on the other side of that is grace and good and happiness. So, yeah, it's a very great yoga principle that goes through bodybuilding as well, goes into life as well. But we're just talking about exercise and fitness and wellness. When you're doing your exercises, don't forget about the whole body, right? Protagonist, antagonist. I don't even like to say antagonist, but it's opposing muscle groups, right? Your pull groups don't really work on your push groups, is the thought process. So, same thing with a deep squat. Once your hips approach and break parallel in a deep squat, your hamstrings and glutes are activated, and they're almost responsible for contracting, from pulling you down, for holding you down. And the quads and hip flexors and the glutes drive you out of the hole, right? It's not just a quad exercise. Every exercise has more into it. You just got to continue to squeeze the juice out of it. So I hope you enjoy your day today. Hopefully you begin your practice in, whether that's in the gym or on the mat. Peace.